All right, folks. Good morning. I'm going full Silicon Valley with a hoodie today because I think it's about 82 degrees in Florida right now, so I'm a little chilly. Hey, don't judge me. I've been living down here way too long. Folks, glad to see you here. Smack that share button. Make sure you push this out to your friends. And as normal, throw in comments, man. We love the comments and we love the interaction. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 39th episode of FinTech Insider, the Breakfast Show US. 39 business days now. We've been doing this. Unbelievable. I'm Sam Maule, 11FS Managing Director, North America. I'm your host for the morning show. Do let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear where in the world you are. We've had guests from and folks from Manila, Saudi Arabia, Zurich, all over Africa. And just absolutely love that. So let us know where you're at. We'll give you a shout out. Please share the link to this stream. Hit that like button and subscribe to 11FS on LinkedIn so you never miss a show. And if you haven't read our latest research yet, the link is in the post here, but it's really fantastic. It's all about the needs of SMB owners in the U.S. and how financial institutions can make propositions to better serve them. Head to bit.ly, so bit.ly/BIGITASMB, or click the link in the post. All right, first off, 3 news stories from the past 24 hours that caught my attention and should have yours. And yes, I did come up with that tagline after a couple of beers. First one, Forbes. They report today that payment startup Marqeta more than doubles their valuation to $4.3 billion US. So the Oakland-based fintech startup Marqeta, good friends of ours, love Jason Gardner and the team there. We've worked with them and launched some products on the Marqeta platform. They have raised $150 million in new funding from a single investor at a $4.3 billion valuation. So yes, they're a unicorn. It's a steep rise from the $1.9 billion it fetched in March 2019. Marqeta declined to comment on the investor's name, but a source familiar with the matter says it's Capital Group ACGL, the Los Angeles investment firm that runs American funds and has about $1.7 trillion in assets under management. So big congrats and shout outs to Jason and the team out in Oakland at Marqeta. On the jobs front, MSNBC noted another 2.1 million file jobless claims this past week. Good news is the total unemployed number shrunk a little bit since the pandemic was declared in mid-March. More than 40 million Americans have filed claims as social distancing measures aimed at containing the coronavirus outbreak resulted in as much of a 21.5 trillion U.S. economy contraction. Unbelievable. A separate report Thursday showed that first quarter GDP contracted by 5%, while the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now tracker is indicating a 41.9% plunge in Q2. That would be the worst in U.S. history. And by the way, follow the Atlanta Fed. Some of the reports that they push out, same with the Philadelphia Fed and others, are fantastic and free. So you should take a look at those. And in a related story in Bloomberg, they discussed the COVID-19 impact on Silicon Valley layoffs. Overall, the industry has cut more than 40,000 jobs. For example, Uber announced it would slash 3,700 positions. Airbnb is cutting 1,900 and Lyft another 1,000. So travel and research tech companies are hardest hit with about 14,000 layoffs. Retail at 9,000, consumer services at about 4,700. Interestingly enough, though, fintech is only at about 1,621 by Bloomberg's estimates. These layoffs include layoffs and furloughs from companies like Lending Club, Carta, and Cabbage. All right, with this, let's get our guest in. This is going to be a fun conversation because as we were doing the show prep, we found out we have a whole bunch in common. So today I'm happy to be joined by Daniel P. Simon. Daniel is truly a Renaissance leader, and I put that in there because they're my favorite kind of folks, people that dabble across the board, but dabble very well. So let me make sure I got all this right. Daniel is the chairman of the Museum of American Finance Communications Board. He's the CEO of Vested, a global financial communications firm. He represents some of the most recognizable names in finance and fintechs. That includes Morgan Stanley, Bloomberg, Goldman Sachs. He's a regular columnist for Forbes, Markets Media, and Cointelegraph, a regular commentator on platforms like Cheddar. I do love Cheddar, Asset TV, and FinTech TV. Daniel also just authored his first book, The Money Hackers. On today's show, we'll be talking about the book, who's in it, what are some of the critical pinpoints fintech is solving, and we'll talk a little bit about Vested. So Daniel, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Sam.
And what part of the world are you in? I believe you're in New York, right?
Well, I would be in New York. I'd be in Brooklyn, but I'm currently in beautiful Long Branch, New Jersey.
Oh my God. You are a New Yorker.
I truly am a New Yorker, and I am broadcasting from the crawl space above my father-in-law's garage.
I am
Aren't we all?
I am broadcasting from my 18-year-old daughter's bedroom, hence the
Perfect.
Green Day poster and Arctic Monkeys poster behind me. At someday I'm going to get back to my office. Yeah, they're good bands, man. I saw Arctic Monkeys in Leeds at a festival back in the day, so go figure. I introduced my daughter to those bands, so I feel like I am a cool person. Daniel, I called you a Renaissance man because you're all over the place and what you do and do well. If you don't mind, can we start with Vested? Let's give your company a shout out.
Sure.
What do you got? What do y'all focus on? What's your sweet spot?
So Vested is an integrated communications firm focused exclusively on the financial services space. So when we founded the business, we were all financial folks, and it really does tie to some of the way that fintech is transforming finance and banking. And what we realized is that the way that financial firms talk to their end customers was changing. Technology was going to transform that. And the financial services industry was going to need a huge amount of help telling stories about the industry and about the individual offerings, whether that was the buy side, the sell side, commercial banking, real estate, anything that money touches. And so we decided to create a communications firm that was really, really narrowly focused on finance. So we have our own chief economist, Milton Israeli, who's the former chief economist of Lord Abbott. We put all our people through FINRA's SIE training, whether they like it or not, and mostly they don't. So we're really, really specialist. We're really focused. And then we combine that with being very broad in the kind of services that we deliver. So we do advertising, we do marketing, we do PR, we do content creation and copywriting, and we do them for some of the biggest names in the space. You named some of them: Morgan Stanley, Bloomberg, Citi, RBC, Canada Life, Scotiabank, Goldman Sachs. You name it, we're working with them.
So do you consider yourself? I am curious about this. I selfishly consider myself a storyteller, and I obviously, with your background, consider you one. What do you think the secret is to that? Being a good storyteller.
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely do think of myself as a storyteller, not just because I wrote this very long story about finance and fintech, but because that's basically what I get paid to do, is to tell stories. I think you have to have a passion for the stories, and I fell into finance 20 years ago, and if you'd have told me 25 years ago this is what you're going to do, I would have told you to go screw off. But you have to be fascinated by it. The more I dug into it, and that's where the book came from, the more I kind of realized this is amazing. Money touches everything. What we at the Museum of Finance would call the 3 Ps of finance: public, private, and personal. Public, how governments and municipalities raise and manage money. Private, how ideas come to life in the capital markets. And then personal being the money in people's wallets. And you look at a crisis like COVID, and you've got those 3 Ps in play. You've got unprecedented financial stimulus from the government and the Fed. You've got private enterprises like Hertz or Neiman Marcus declaring bankruptcy. And of course, you've got the effect on SMBs and people's wallets very dramatically. And people didn't have $500 in emergency savings before this crisis. And so you think about the impact. When it comes to telling stories about this, you have to be passionate about it. You have to find that stuff interesting. You can't tell stories that you're not personally invested in and that you're not personally interested in. That's why I think people choose Vested, just to give it a shout out. That's why I say, the expertise of the interest in the market is so important. It isn't just about we understand your business better, but it's if you're designating us a storyteller on your behalf, we have to be equally passionate about what it is that you do. And that passion comes in part from focus.
Or for other brands and do it authentically. Because I know that being authentic is near and dear to your heart, right? And that's tough though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's particularly tough when you've got to be equally authentic on both sides of the story at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is the PR agency you have to do. So you represent maybe a traditional institution that doesn't have a robo-advisor and is making the case for human advice. And then on the other hand, you're representing a robo-advisor and you're making the case for disintermediating, human advisors and dramatically reducing the costs. And you have to write both of those speeches in the same day.
Yeah.
That's but again, that's I think it was Oscar Wilde or someone who said, the mark of a smart person is being able to hold, equally contradictory positions at the same time,
which is very rare in different parts of society today. There's my political statement. I'll just move on. Love Oscar Wilde, by the way. So I do want to talk about the book. And by the way, Daniel, just so you know, global audience on today, man. We got Bangalore, we got Manchester, Bournemouth in the UK.
I saw Lagos.
Yeah, I love Lagos. They could write a whole book on the
Lagos.
fintech scene there. I know, go Lagos. So can you hold up the book again, if you don't mind? I love the cover of this book, man.
I can hold up this book for the rest of the interview. I have no problem.
You should.
I have no problem holding it. Let me hold it this side.
Yeah, hold this thing up. I love this thing. So, one, the cover is great. The title, how that hadn't been taken yet. And I know you've done podcasts before. You've had your own podcast. If that's not a great name for a podcast, and I can't believe NPR or somebody hasn't stolen that yet. That is just, the name is great. It sums it up incredibly well, right? I mean, it really does. So let's talk about the book. One, can give us that Amazon, condensed version of what this book is. What did you talk about? What did you focus in on?
By the way, on the cover, the Harper Collins, who published the book, came back with 3 possible covers, and this was their, outside. You'll never go for this one, but here's the crazy one. And I sort of my initial reaction on the cover was this cover looks like I imagine a headache feels. And the idea is sort of very janky, kind of like it's janking out, like it's being hacked. You've got these little SIM cards, and you've got old currency kind of being hijacked. And I actually really enjoyed that.
You're getting a lot of love.
And back in the day when we thought,
good.
Back in the day when we thought there were going to be these things called bookstores, we thought that it would be a good thing. It would pop off those shelves. It's probably still in those shelves, but they're covered in dust.
You know what, though? So you wrote the book, and I think the cover is important. I buy a book every time I fly. I have a library full of books, but every time I fly, I buy a book. I want something that'll keep my attention on an overseas flight. Sure. I tell you, man, that one would jump out at me. I would grab that just based off the cover. I would grab that.
Thank you, and you should, and everyone should. I'll give you the quick summary of the book. So the book is the story of how technology has transformed our money in the wake of the 2008 crisis, the last crisis, and how the vacuum that the banks created by exiting much of the innovation space at precisely the wrong time created the kind of perfect conditions, a perfect storm for a generation of entrepreneurs and innovators and technologists who were not out of finance, who were West Coast thinkers, who had lots of different careers, and it's their story. And the way I sold it to Harper Collins was, what Michael Lewis did so well with The Big Short was he took a really complex concept like mortgage securitization, and he explained it very simply through the lens of the people who saw the crisis coming. And I said, I said to the publisher at HarperCollins, when was the last time you wrote a check, or when was the last time you paid for something not using your phone, or you had to take cash out of an ATM? And they said, not very recently. And I said, I want to tell the story of how that came to be, just like Lewis did, through the lens of the really fascinating individuals who are behind this trend. So not talking about the technology, not beginning every chapter with, let me tell you about payment gateways, or let me talk to you about APIs, but rather, let me talk to you about this refugee from Somalia who wanted to change the way people move money across borders. And so I said in my author's note, come for the innovators, stay for the innovation.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
And that's what they bought. So that's really the story. Every chapter we take a look at a part of the bank that's been disrupted, the way that we spend money, the way that we share money, the way that we save it, that we borrow and lend it, and the way that we invest it. And then really focus on the 1 or 2 or 3 pioneers in that space, many of whom have movie book entire books and movies that could be written and told about their lives. They're just absolutely bonkers. The subtitle for the book is How a Group of Misfits Took on Wall Street and Changed Finance Forever. And that's a really good description of most of the people in this book. They do not fit into the traditional mold of financial services. And I think that's why it's a good read.
I tell you why I definitely think it's a good read is, and you summarized it incredibly well. You're not doing a taxonomy on everything that makes up fintech. You're telling the story of people, and that's what we like, stories about people. That goes back to, sitting in caves around a fire, and you're wrapping that around a seismic change that we're seeing in society across the globe, with the adoption of technology and technology more or less becoming part of us. And those people that are changing. You interviewed over 100 people for this, right?
150, yeah.
150. Yeah. So I haven't written a book yet. I've had people telling me to do it, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine the process. But I do know that the art of editing down is what everybody tells me you have to be able to do. So how did you go from 150 down to 100? There's got to be some stories on the cutting room floor that are incredible.
Oh my, there's so many, and there's so many great people. We were talking about them before this. People like Jennifer Tescher, at the Financial Health Network, who I couldn't fit in the book, but who were enormously helpful in terms of pointing me in the right direction. Initially we thought every chapter would have one person. So we'd say, okay, lending is going to be, Renaud Laplanche, founder of Lending Club. And then, we talk to someone and they'd say, well, you can't talk about lending without talking about business lending. You have to talk to Cabbage. Have you spoken to Catherine Petrolia? And we'd go, no. And they'd say, okay, well, let me set that up. So what was initially going to be one chapter, one person per chapter, one conversation, spun out of control and sort of turned into these enormous. And so we created sidebars in the book. You'll see there are these sidebars that have, mini chapters essentially, where we say, okay, Catherine Petrolia, meet Catherine, or meet John Bogle, or meet Margaret Keane from Synchrony Bank. And they don't get the entire chapter. They're little carve-outs inside someone else's chapter. So one answer was we just crammed them in there. Like we didn't, one answer was we tried as hard not to put anybody on the cutting room floor. I don't think it was the people that are on the cutting room floor so much as the areas. So what we didn't talk about, right? We didn't talk about real estate. Real estate's the world's largest asset class, and it's been massively disrupted by technology, and we couldn't get it in. We didn't talk about commercial fintech. So, how can you write a book about fintech without talking about Square and Stripe? Well, we did. We just didn't. We just didn't write that chapter.
Yeah, Jack and the Colson twins. Yeah, they're doing fine. They're getting enough attention. Bless them.
Well, I mean, it's a great point that they are doing fine, and I'd love to. I would love to have been able to squeeze in a Jack Dorsey section and a Square and Stripe section, but we just had to say this isn't going to be. We're just not going to be able to cover commercial fintech. So we didn't cover commercial fintech. We didn't cover real estate. We barely touched on China, which is arguably the world's largest fintech market. We talk about it a little bit towards the end of the book, but any one of those could be their own books.
Here's what you want, Daniel. So Veronica Truist, love Veronica. She just said, okay, I'm sold. Next stop, Amazon book section. So Bianca, go ahead and grab that link to the book and throw it in the comment section for everybody. Let's get your orders up as we speak. You know what I like that you talked about? You talked about, the concept of how hackers and misfits kind of came and disrupted, financial services. And even in the format of the book, you've done that. Like Brian Solis does that a lot, right? If you guys don't know Brian Solis, good author, a lot of books, good speaker too, talking about social and the impact of technology. And he's hacked what a book is considered to be, right? He's tried different formats, different ways to do that. And I like that you did that in your book with the side out, the call outs, I think that's genius.
Yeah. And we did this, we did a lot of this. So we've got these detailed timelines about the sort of the history as a way to try and explain how we got here.
Yep.
A lot of, fun illustrations with the background to their faces, kind of trying to represent kind of what they've tried to disrupt. That's Adam Dell from Clarity Money.
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah. We were inspired by Copeland's book, Gen X, which has a lot of marginalia and a lot of I wanted to make it visual. If this was going to be a book that we were trying to make, we were trying to make it so that consumers could read something and not be bored to tears by what we're fascinated by.
Yeah.
I knew that we had to, bring in a visual element. And Harper Collins, to their credit, I thought they were going to say, that's not what we do. And they said, yeah, we love it. Let's do sidebars. Let's do your timeline. Let's do illustration.
Yeah.
So it's not quite a pop-up book, but it is quite visual.
So Sunaina, she's the head of data acquisition at M Science in New York, just said, love it. I'm sold too. We just put the link out there. Start clicking on the link, folks. Buy the book because I get a revenue share from this show. Nah, that's bullshit, but that would be funny.
I don't even know if I get a revenue share from the sale of my book.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, for those of you that don't know, if you think writing a book is a money-making proposition, especially your first one, Daniel, no, it isn't. And we all know that.
Yeah, there's no money in it.
It's a passion project. It really is. I mean, it has to be. So
it is, and I mean, and it was enormously fun to write, and I made some lifelong friends out of this. I mean, people like Renaud Laplanche and Catherine Petralia.
I love Catherine.
Blythe Masters.
Yeah.
And Adam Dell. I now count amongst my actual friends.
So this is a true story about Catherine at Cabbage, one of the co-founders, along with Rob Frohline at Cabbage. I've had the chance to, we've actually done a live show from Cabbage in Atlanta before. One of the funnest ones I've ever done. And Catherine she's a lit major, by the way. And she is an English language use snob. She will get all over you. But she also likes to cuss more than anybody I've ever met. And that was one of the questions I asked her. What's your favorite curse word? And she gave me a 10-minute answer. It was awesome, Daniel. I love that. And yet she is brilliant, runs a great company. She's a great founder. She's a great leader in this space. And also one of the sweetest people I know. I mean, I love Catherine to death.
All of that is 100% true. I'll throw in one other thing. We're both English lit majors, so that's another thing that we had in common. She and I. She's also a doomsday prepper, like I am. So,
so you're doing great.
I've done perfectly well. I had a big bunker set up, and so does she. And
oh my
so we
God.
compared bunkers. Back in February, we shot the video for the trailer for the book, and we were comparing notes. And I thought my bunker layup was pretty good, but she's got water. She's got her own water supply.
Oh God!
And the funny thing about that is, of course, if you meet her, she's so sweet, and unassuming, and not the person you'd expect to be sort of walls of AK-47s in her own sort of water treatment plant under her house. But she's that person.
Yeah. Do not mess with Catherine, everybody, and never bet against her ever.
And the book is full of people like that, and I didn't go out looking for them. I think that's the other thing is I wasn't, it wasn't like I sort of filtered and threw away anyone that was too normal. I went out and it is true that this industry has been revolutionized by a bunch of people who are like Catherine. They are weird. They would be perfectly happy with me calling them weird.
Yes.
They are funky. They're different. They're cool. They've got life stories that have nothing to do with I went to, I joined as an analyst in JP Morgan in 1982 or what, nothing like that. Steve Street was in the music industry. Ishmael Ahmed was a refugee. John Stein was a consultant. Like René Laplanche was a technologist. They've all got these backstories. They're very, very strange individuals, and I didn't go looking for them. It's just the fact that those are the people that have brought us the way that we interact with money today.
Yeah. So just for our global audience, just to give you an idea about this, because he mentioned some great names. So one example of that, Steve Street is the founder of Green Dot. So the original, the OG of prepaid here in the U.S. He was a DJ in LA when he started.
Yeah,
this. I mean, there you go. I love.
He invented the category of. He invented the category that we know as soft rock. So he was an A&R guy, and when they were like, "What is this music? It's not hard rock, but it's not pop," and he was like, "Let's call it soft rock." And then a million radio stations were born, and that was his first claim to fame. He created soft rock, and when he wanted to get, he didn't realize he was going to create the world's largest bank for the underbanked. He thought that he was going to make credit cards for kids, and so that's a sort of classic pivot story. The idea that you come up with is fundamentally totally wrong, and then you pivot and you do something different. That's not something that we don't pivot in finance. Banks don't pivot. They start to deliver a service, and they pretty much go about doing it. Steve Street wanted to create credit cards for kids, didn't work, but it was he was finding a market in the underbanked. The co-founders of Venmo thought they were going to create a tipping app for your favorite band. Lots of these companies started as one thing and went on to be something else.
So again, in the comments, you've got a ridiculous number of folks saying, "I'm reading the book right now. I love it. I'm getting the book, ordering it now." It is a great book. Let me just make one request to you, Daniel. It's when you sell the movie rights, please keep it as a documentary, because I don't want to see like Leonardo DiCaprio playing you. No, with your accent, it would probably be, I don't know, Mel Gibson. Nah,
oh my God,
that's a horrible one. I'm trying to think who would
that's
play you.
That's a terrible idea.
Yeah, it is. So keep it as a documentary.
Let me tell you the chapter that let me tell you about the chapter I do want to make as a book.
Good.
As a movie. It is Ishmael Ahmed.
Yes.
Who's the co-founder of World Remit.
Yep.
I've already figured it out. It's going to be the young Jaden Smith playing the young Ishmael Ahmed when he's a refugee in Somalia, hiding in the wheelbed of a truck to get out and survive. And then when he goes on to be the head of remittances for the UN and uncovers a scandal there and gets fired, and he sues the UN, all of this is 100% true, by the way. I'm thinking Idris Elba for the older Ishmael Ahmed.
Good choice.
This is my dream story.
Best thing about him, he's a Gunners fan, by the way. Idris is an Arsenal fan, so I'm sorry everybody who hates Arsenal. Stick it. Greatest team in the world. And Idris, one of the best actors in the world. What he did about Mandela, and I've seen actually dialect coaches talk about that's probably one of the best jobs an actor's ever done. We're geeking out now because we both have ADD. I'm sorry. That's what happens when you get two people with ADD talking about something they love. Folks, we're out of time. Isn't it amazing how fast this goes? I want to thank, the global audience for joining in, for asking good questions, for talking about the book. Daniel, I want to thank you. We need to get you back on because this is just fun. So do me a favor. What's the best place to find folks to find out more about you, about Zested, and about the book?
Easy. You can follow me at Daniel P. Simon on Twitter. If you go to danielpsimon.com, you can see the website. You can download all the extra videos because we shot a bunch of videos with these folks. Watch the trailer for the book if you're still not convinced. And then, of course, you can find the book anywhere the books are sold. Amazon, but there's also a couple of links to smaller bookshops if you don't want to buy them through the giant conglomerate.
Yeah. Support local business, people. All right, that's it for today. Tomorrow, I'm joined by Olga Bartnicki from Barclays Accelerator. Again, if you know someone who'd be good to come on the show, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Twitter is really good, at Sam Maule, or at breakfastshow@11fs.com. Everybody, thanks for joining. Go buy the damn book. We'll see you tomorrow.